One of the things that I want to do real fast is make sure that everyone has seen the materials tab and that you have downloaded that. Make sure that you have all of your paperwork and stuff from there. So if you haven't already done that, please go ahead and check that out. This is part 2 in a 2-part webinar series. We did part 1 on Friday, so if you were with us for that, welcome back to part 2. I gave you a short preview of what was coming today, but if you were not with us on Friday or you have not taken part 1 in a previous webinar series, because this was offered in the fall as well, don't worry about it. We actually spend a little bit of time in the beginning going over the 6 techniques from part 1, because even if you did attend that, having a review is always a good thing. And then if you have not, then like I said, don't worry about it. We will cover it enough to be able to give you some background knowledge so that you can move forward with us with part 2. This is being recorded and it will be put up on our website for later access if you would like to see that or go back and listen to it later on. We do not provide the PowerPoint. So as you are orientating yourself to the materials section, if you're feeling like, uh-oh, I'm missing something, I don't have the PowerPoint, you actually are not missing anything, because the PowerPoint is not given simply because, again, this is recorded. It is an ongoing webinar in our series. But at any time, if you have questions, please feel free to email me. My contact information will be at the end of the PowerPoint, and I am more than happy to connect and help. So hopefully any last minute attendees have gotten on by now and we can go ahead and get started. So as I said, my name is Melissa Milani. I am the consultant for the northeastern part of Florida with Saltillo, which means I cover basically from Naples across to the other side of the state, the coast over in Brevard County, and then it kind of triangulates up into the Jacksonville, Fernandina Beach area. So if you are in any part of that part of our state, that's my area. If you're south, you've got Sarah, and if you are northwest, you've got Rena. So there's 3 people in the lovely Sunshine State to help serve you. And if you are outside of Florida, then don't worry, we have a consultant that's in your area, and you can find who that person is by searching on our website through your zip code. So that's another really good feature if you have a client you're working with that you know is going to be relocating. You can direct them to find their Saltillo consultant based on that. I also serve as the funding liaison for Saltillo, so I love this job. I love being able to work with all of you. And if we haven't had a chance to work together and you're in my area, I hope we get the chance to do so soon. We're going to take care of a little bit of housekeeping here before we get into the content. Number 1, this webinar is going to focus exclusively on our Saltillo products and apps, so I'll be using those in the examples. I am a consultant that is contracted by Saltillo, which we already discussed, and I do receive devices in order to use for trainings such as this, as well as in-person trainings. So if we do any type of lunch and learn or different types of tutorials where I come to your place of business, then those devices are provided by Saltillo. I am a licensed and certified SLP, and therefore I am a member of ASHA, as well as Special Interest Group 12. This webinar is offered for CEUs. It is 1 hour or
Melissa? Melissa?
Sorry, for some reason it muted me there for a second. I'm not sure what happened. Can
Okay.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, you gotta love technology. Okay, so as I was saying, you do need to make sure that you include the training date on the form, and that is per ASHA. And please make sure that you submit your participation form within 15 days so that we can get those sent in to ASHA on time so you do get credit for your CEUs. The other part of this is you do have to stay online the entire time. If you get kicked off, because we do, depend on technology, and we just had a snafu on my end, none of us are immune to it, just go ahead and log back on, but you do have to be on the entire time. We have to monitor that and make sure that we basically vouch that you were present for the entire time so you can get those CEUs from ASHA. Now, a little bit of housekeeping as far as the GoToMeeting is concerned. If you have attended one of these before, then it should look familiar. You're going to have some type of control panel that is going to be on the right-hand side of your screen. Depending on how you're accessing this, it might look slightly different. But if it bothers you having it visible on your screen, you can press the little orange arrow to collapse it, and then if you need to expand it again, just push it the other direction. Everyone is muted, so you won't be able to speak to me directly, but what you can do is type in the chat section. You'll see that down there by materials as well. So if you have any question, go ahead and type in there. I will be monitoring that as best I can, but as you heard Kim, our monitor, moderator, she'll be watching that as well. And if there's something that comes up, then she will jump in too. Okay, so one of the things that I like to do before we get started is a little poll to see who is here, because we've got all different people that attend. So if you identify with one of these areas as the primary reason that you're here, you may be an SLP, but perhaps you're attending this because you're a parent of someone that uses AAC. So if you could please check what you identify with most. If you are an OT for perhaps a different clinical type of position, you could select that you might be an AAC consultant or specialist if you don't particularly see your exact clinical response. So we've got some coming in, and it looks like we've got the overwhelming majority are SLPs, but we do have some teachers, parents, and AAC consultants or specialists here. So that's great. That really helps me as the presenter make sure that I am gearing things towards you in this area. So that's great. The other thing I'd like to ask, if you could do me a favor and answer this next poll, is if you attended part 1 of our Model and Grow series. So that could be if you attended on Friday, just a couple days ago, or if you attended in the past few months, if you watched it online, or if you watched it live when we did this live back at the start of the school year. So we've got some coming in, and it looks like 2/3 of you have attended that, but a good portion, obviously 1/3, has not. So that's very helpful. And again, I will do my best to go a little bit more in depth on those 6 techniques so that our individuals that have not attended that part yet have some more information. But again, you can go back and access part 1 through our website, so that should be helpful to you. One of the things that I do with all of my workshops, whether it's through a webinar or it's in person, is I like to give you a multi-pass approach to learning, meaning you'll see it on the slide, you'll hear me talk about it, you'll see it being modeled in a video, and then we might revisit that few different types of learning again a few times. And the reason that we do this is because not only do we know that repeated exposures aid for learning, but my goal is I want you as a professional learner to be able to have this information fairly well committed to your memory when we're done with this hour. Because I don't know about you, but I'll speak from my experience. When I attend a workshop, if I have to go and grab my papers from what I just learned in that workshop in order to be able to implement what I learned, then that's kind of a problem. I need to be able to have that information committed to memory, ready to go, and then the application typically comes much more easily and quickly. So I'm going to revisit some of these bits of information a few times, and hopefully that will help you. So we're going to talk about successful communication. And as I said, we're going to review the 6 techniques from part 1. And we're also going to talk about the use of storybooks. Storybooks and dialogic book reading is absolutely huge in order to aid people with not only language learning, but vocabulary, turn taking, lots of different things. And then we're going to look at 2 strategies, again, within a shared storybook reading context, and that's going to be the RAAP and the RAAP strategies. And I just saw a message pop up. It looks like Jennifer is not able to hear, but I haven't seen anyone else say anything. So if you're able to hear, then let me know. Everything looks okay on my end. But if you could just type in that chat. Okay, I've got a few coming in that they can hear. So Jennifer, maybe try reestablishing your connection, checking to make sure that you're not connected to anything Bluetooth. Thank you to everyone that's typing that you can hear. That's awesome. I certainly don't want to be talking and then have no one be able to hear. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing today, looking at these 2 strategies. And again, within a shared storybook context. I'm also going to try and give you some examples of some different storybooks that I really like and some of the features of some books that tend to lend themselves to this type of intervention approach and strategy. So here's some reasons. And again, we always like to have evidence. So for our SLPs that are with us, very important that we have evidence to support what we're doing and why we're doing it. So we know, based on the research, when we use storybooks, and I do have the word story in parentheses because you can use these techniques and strategies with other books. It can also be used with magazines if that really captures your client's attention. But the storybooks are really a great way to start. And it also gives you, as the interventionist or as the parent, the person that's carrying this strategy out, it gives you a little bit of support when you're first learning it and you haven't really become fluent in how to execute this strategy yet. So we know storybooks are highly contextualized. It's really great to be able to use a story to talk about whether it's a social story, whether it's a series of events, whether it's something that you do as part of a daily routine, something that happens in your classroom. And they usually, again, if it's a storybook, have some type of visual support that goes with it, which is extremely helpful, again, for engaging in conversation and turn taking. We also know language is reciprocal. And so when we learn about language, we know that listening, speaking, reading, and writing, they feed or fuel each other. So the better we become in one area, the better that we become in the others. So seeing the written text on a book, even if our clients are not reading that text, they're hearing us read it. They are listening, they're seeing the words written on the text, we're having that conversation. And then even as young kids begin to learn to read, quote unquote, not necessarily decoding the text, they will make things up, They will fill in the text for the characters, things like that. And so it's a highly reciprocal relationship that has massive benefits for our clients. It's extremely natural. This is something that, again, we should be doing no matter what, whether it's with one of our own children, whether it's with a client, a spouse, whoever it is. It's a very natural thing to read to people. And even as we get older, now when we age and we get up into older grades, it's not very frequent that we have our teachers or our therapists read to us. But when we do, there's very few people that will protest being read to, especially if it's a narrative, if it's a story. They may not be as excited about some expository text being read to them, but typically if you're reading to someone, they will not object. Again, even think about us with, as adults, using audiobooks, Audible, things like that. It's enjoyable to have someone read to you. It also allows for simplified scaffolding, and this is what I was referring to when I said it makes it a little bit easier for us as providers to learn these strategies and be able to start implementing them, because it's giving us a set of text, it's giving us content to be able to build those scaffolds, those supports for our clients, by asking certain questions that go along with the text, that go along with the stories. It allows for turn taking very naturally, closed procedures, being able to fill in certain words. Again, even if we're just using single symbol messages, when we have that type of support, it makes it easier not only for us, but also for our clients. It also allows for social learning. As I said, you can turn this into an opportunity to not only work on literacy and turn taking and AAC, but also on pragmatics and working with social routines and different things that we may need to learn if we're new to a classroom or new to a school, for example. And then it really allows us to get an idea on early literacy predictors. Now, literacy in the world of AAC is absolutely critical, and yet it oftentimes is not addressed as early as it should be or as often as it should be. We know, based on all of the research from the last few decades, that there are certain skills that are extreme red flags if a child is not able to do some of these early literacy and pre-literacy type of activities. We don't have to wait for them to struggle or fail with reading and writing activities. We already have a peek into the future with seeing these types of predictors. If they're strong, if they're well-versed in being able to rhyme and manipulate phonemes and things like that, then that's wonderful. But if they're struggling with those areas, then that gives us a big clue, like we need to start working on this immediately. And when we work with people using AAC, like I said, a lot of times the focus tends to shift to the AAC device, and that's natural to do so, but we absolutely don't want to neglect literacy. So having these storybooks as part of our intervention and using these strategies is a great way to make sure that we don't accidentally skip over that. Okay, so these are the 6 techniques that we cover in part 1. All of them work together to make sure that we have increased communication, whether that is increased utterance length, increased turn taking, increased engagement, increased initiation. All of these things work together. So you're going to see these 6 techniques infused within the strategies as well that we're going to talk about today. So I want to take a minute to go over these, again, since we have a good group of us that haven't seen this yet, and explain what these are and give you some examples. And again, if you were with us in part 1, it's never a bad idea to have a refresher. So the first one is modeling, aided AAC modeling. And what that means is that we are using the device, the NovaChat, the Chat Fusion. If you've printed out pages from their device as a low-tech option, then you're modeling with that. No matter what it is that they have for their aided AAC, you are modeling with that. And the way that that works is basically you're going to speak, whether that's making a comment or asking a question or reading the text in a book, and then you're also going to point to and select at least one button or one item that corresponds with what you're saying. So for example, if you were to ask the question, it's lunchtime here where I am right now. If I was to ask the question, what do you want for lunch? I could select the word what, I could select the word want, I could select the word lunch. It doesn't matter as long as I select at least one word. Now, could I select all three of those when I'm modeling? Absolutely. But in the beginning, when I'm learning to provide aided modeling, it may be all that I can cognitively handle to juggle, for example, a group therapy session plus, several kids, managing this, modeling, doing all of this if I'm brand new to this. So it is absolutely okay to choose a single word to model on the device. And when you model, you are still speaking that word. Now, SLPs, I'm going to address you for a minute since there's a good bit of you. A lot of times we can get very hung up on the very precise details, and then we kind of get stopped in our tracks, if you will, because we feel like it has to be perfect or I'm not going to do it at all. I don't know if there's any other type A's out there like me, but I know that tends to be my reaction. And there's really no wrong way to do this other than to not do it. So if you were to be modeling what do you want for lunch and only pushing the word what, you could push the button before and then speak the whole sentence. You could push the button simultaneously as you say the word what, or you could say the word what, then push the button and then finish your sentence. As long as you are modeling, you don't want to not say the word, and you also don't want to skip modeling. As you become more fluid with this, the more that you're able to model, the better, because it also will help you learn where words are stored in the device and where to navigate to. If something is missing, you can add that word in. So modeling is our first technique, and it's very powerful. It's one of the first things that I teach parents because they sometimes feel like, okay, the device is for my child, or if it's a spouse, the device is for my spouse, that's it. They're the ones that use it. We absolutely have to model. The second one is pausing, and in the clinical term, we talk about this as expectant delay. And it basically means giving a substantial amount of time for the person using the NovaChat to process what we have said, whether that's a comment or a question, whatever it is. They need to process it, and then they need time to formulate a response. And if that includes multiple different symbols, that can take some time. If we are constantly filling the air with our own talking, which can feel a lot more comfortable than having this very pregnant pause in the room, we are doing our clients a disservice because we are not allowing them the chance to be an active conversational partner. Think about if you were having a partner or a conversation with someone that was speaking and they took 90% of the conversational turns and you had to very quickly try and get a word in edgewise. Chances are you, number one, wouldn't want to have a conversation with them very often. And number two, you probably would get tired of it and give up and kind of turn passive. And that's exactly what happens with our clients. So when we pause, we want to try and count to 10 in our heads. And if you can see that they're formulating a response or they're thinking about what you just said, give them some more time. There's really no set time limit on this. Unless you see, okay, they're not thinking about what I said, they're not trying to answer anything, they're just killing time, then move along. Yes, of course. But pausing or expectant delay is huge, and it's also a very uncomfortable thing when you first get started with it. So practice, because it does make for better performance with this. The second thing is asking WH questions as well as answering WH questions. So when we have someone that gets a device, a lot of times we find ourselves asking very simple questions because we want them to have success with using the device. And so we tend to fall back on yes, no, and two-choice questions. Those are also easier for us to manage as conversational partners, but we are not helping grow their language. When we ask WH questions, we are giving them a more complex language example, and we are affording them the opportunity to answer in a way that is not kind of predetermined. They don't have only two choices. If we ask, do you want grilled cheese or chicken nuggets for lunch? They only have two choices. But if I say, what do you want for lunch? They could tell me they want salmon. I mean, it could be something completely off my radar, but because I've asked the type of question that allows for that type of communication, I've set them up for success. The other part that goes with this is answering those WH questions. A lot of people will say, I get it, I can ask WH questions all day long, but my clients don't answer. Well, sometimes that's because they have learned to really excel in this passive communicator role, meaning if I just sit back long enough, she's going to move on and I'm not going to have to do any work, which we don't want. We want to not only provide the model for answering questions, but we really want to set that expectation of, I have paused and given you time, I have asked you a question, and this question, we're not just moving right along, we're going to answer it. So think about it too when you are teaching a young child to talk. We might ask these kinds of questions in a rhetorical manner. You know, we might be loading them into the car and saying, oh, where are we going to go today? And we don't expect our child to say, we're going to the grocery store. We answer back, well, first we're going to go to the dry cleaners, and then we're going to go visit mommy or daddy for lunch, and then we're going to go to Publix. Like, we will answer the same questions that we have asked, and we need to be doing that with our clients as well. The next two go together, the verbal prompt and the physical prompt. Again, a lot of times when this is new, our clients need to be told explicitly what we expect them to do. We need them to show us two if we're working on multi-symbol messages. We need them to answer the WH question. We need to tell them, use your Nova chat, things like that, because they have maybe gotten used to, like I said, that passive role of just kind of hanging out and waiting for people to keep on moving. But if we give them that prompt or that physical prompt of touching their elbow or gesturing to the device, telling them like, we are waiting for you, then that sets that expectation. It also can be a scaffold that should be removed as our clients get better with this. And then the last one is responsivity. So a lot of times as communication partners, if one of our clients selects an item on their device that we maybe feel is an inaccurate selection or what we call a mishit, really that's not up to us to judge. If they select salmon for lunch and we go, wow, okay, that wasn't what I was expecting, we shouldn't override them and say, I don't think you meant to hit that. I think you meant to hit mac and cheese, which is right next to it. So I'm going to give you that. We need to respond and say, oh, really? Are we doing something different today? They will usually then, I realize that they have needed to correct that, or they'll give us some type of nonverbal communication, some type of eye contact or something that says, nope, that was not correct. But we need to respond to what they communicate. Again, just like we would to anyone else that we were having a conversation with, making sure that we are responding to everything that they communicate with. So that was kind of a pretty fast review of those 6 techniques, but hopefully it gives you enough of an exposure, if you haven't attended part 1, to see what it is that we're going to be looking at in terms of these next 2 strategies. So These two strategies are based on the work of Dr. Jennifer Kent Walsh, and if you look in her entire career with Dr. Kathy Binger, they have done quite a bit of research with communication partner training, as well as with these specific strategies with individuals, different ages, different communication partners, different settings, all kinds of very helpful evidence. And the way that the RAAP strategy works is, again, we are looking at it with storybooks. So we are going to follow that green arrow on the left-hand side all the way down. And you'll see that we've got some of the techniques built in here as well. So we're going to read a page in our storybook. It does not mean we're going to read the entire storybook. A lot of times when we start working with individuals with AAC, and we talk about reading books, parents and caregivers, teachers, SLPs, before they've been taught really how to do this, they'll sit down with the book and they'll read from page 1 to the last page without a pause, without doing anything. They just read the book. And we're really talking about dialogic storybook reading, meaning we want to be having a dialogue. We want to be having a conversation as we go through this story. Yes, we're reading the story, but the big focus is having a conversation around that story. The storybook is, again, kind of a framework or a scaffold for us as well as for our client to learn not only the strategy, but communication, turn-taking, vocabulary, literacy skills, all kinds of great things. So we want to read a single page, and we are going to model using the Nova Chat or the Chat Fusion, whatever device it is of ours that they're using. We want to be reading and modeling. What I love to do also is to gloss the pages of the book. So what this means is you can use our chat editor software on your computer and use the capture feature. That will then allow you to easily print out visuals of the button that they're going to see corresponding on their device, and you can then tape or Velcro that into the pages of the booklet. So they now see the text on the page as well as the corresponding symbol or button right there on the book, and then they see you modeling it. So they get multiple inputs of it. So you're going to read the text and model. And then we wait. There's that pause or expectant delay. We wait. And remember, we're usually going to count to 10, but if we see that they need more time, we're going to give them more time. This can be very difficult, especially for my parents that are attending here. If you are doing this at home and you've got other children and things are busy in the house, pausing can be a challenge because you feel like, I need to get through this book. They told me to read the book. I've got to do this. But the focus is not on completing the book. The focus is on using this strategy to its best fidelity, meaning that you're doing it as it's programmed, even if that means you only get through 3 pages at a time. That's okay. So you pause. If your client does not do anything, does not initiate any type of communication, you're going to ask a WH question. Remember, the WH questions are the most powerful. Now, when you start to do this at first, it can be extremely easy to fall back into a yes, no, or a 2-choice question. So what I always suggest is previewing the book and thinking about what WH questions can you ask on each page. Write those on some Post-it notes and stick those Post-it notes right on the page in the book. That way, when you turn the page and you see that text, you can remove the Post-it note, keep it close by, and when you're done reading and asking, you've got that question right there. Then you wait. Again, that expectant delay. If your client doesn't answer the question, you answer it. If you're asking, what is little critter doing, or where is little critter hiding, Little Critters, some of my favorite books, by the way, with Mercer Mayer, by Mercer Mayer. So you can check those out. I was even in Target just this weekend picking up some other ones. So you ask and then you answer. If at any time your client initiates communication, we respond. So even if they interrupt you while you're reading, if they interrupt you while you're asking the question, you stop and answer them because they have initiated something. They have started that communication turn taking. And so we don't want to say, hold on a minute, let me finish this page, if they have started to talk to us. A lot of times with storybooks that have amazing pictures, that's what's going to get them excited. It's not necessarily the text that you're reading. It's, oh my gosh, look at that picture, look at what's happening, and they will make a comment. We have that conversation, talk about it. The text isn't going anywhere. You can always read it even after you've had that conversation. So it's read, ask, answer, and you've got pauses in between both of those. But at any time, if your client initiates communication, you respond to that. And then you basically repeat this on every page that you do. So it becomes a pattern. It's a structure that becomes familiar, and the expectation becomes set for your client or the child or the person that you're working with. They know we're going to read, I'm going to ask a question, you're going to answer it. And if my client doesn't answer it, I'm going to answer it. I'm going to provide that model and that dialogue. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a video of this in action. So this book is one that I have adapted from Tar Heel Reader, which is a great online resource. And again, I've used our capture feature from our chat editor software to put the symbols that you will see corresponding on a low-tech board right there next to it. So I'm going to model with those same symbols, but they see the words there. Now, the symbols they are not required to be a word that is on the text. It could be from a comment that you're going to make, or again, if you have previewed the stories and you know what questions you're going to ask, you can put those symbols in there as well. So I hope this helps. Let's watch it in action.
Okay, for this strategy, we are going to walk through the RAAP example with a storybook called A Day at the Beach. Now, this is from Tar Heel Reader, and I have also adapted it with some glossed symbols here, you'll notice. And we have our same 96 location low-tech board that we used in part 1. But remember, if you are using a Nova Chat or any other device, a Chat Fusion or Touch Chat, and you have a different board, this is just serving as an example. So you would use whatever board your client is using. Okay, so for our RAAP strategy, the way that Jennifer Kent Walsh discusses it is that we include some of our 6 techniques that we learned in part 1 and reviewed just a moment ago, or all of them as necessary. And we put them into this 3-step process: read, ask, answer. So first, let's talk about it a minute with these examples, and then I'll go through and demonstrate. So we would read what's on the text. A day at the beach. And then we would model using our device or our low-tech board. We would ask a question, whether it's a question that's on the text or a question that we are adding on as part of like a comment or a query. And we would again model with our board. And if we don't have a response given, then we would answer, again, either using the text or filling that answer in and also modeling. So let's run through what this would look like. A day at the beach. What day did we go to the beach? we went to the beach on Sunday. So I read, I asked, and I answered. And in between each of those, I had an expectant delay or a pause. Now, for the purposes of this demonstration, my pause is not as long as it really should be. If I needed to add in anything else, such as a verbal or physical prompt, then I would do that. Let's try another one. At the beach, there is sand and water. I love the beach. I'm pausing here. Even though I didn't ask a question, I'm using one of my techniques where I'm using expectant delay and just waiting. Do you love the beach? Yes, you do love the beach. We always have a good time. So I asked, and then I paused, and then I answered. Now, at any moment, if our client responds, whether it's during the reading, during the asking of the question, or during our providing an answer, we respond and we go right back to the beginning. So even in the middle of reading, if I'm reading this, at the beach, there is sand and water. If my client starts using their board to say something, whether it's I love the beach or I like to play at the beach, something like that, I'm going to stop and I'm going to respond, oh, yes, I love to play at the beach too. I like to take a beach ball. I like to look at the seashells and show them. Okay, I'm not going to keep going through the process if they have initiated communication. So we go through read, ask, answer, always pausing in between the steps and always responding at any point when they initiate communication. And that's how we do rah, rah, rah.
So hopefully seeing that in action helps kind of piece that together a little bit for you. And what I'd like you to do, if you have a second and a piece of paper right in front of you, I want you to think about maybe something that you have done with your clients that might be similar to this that has worked thus far, because that will help you when you have new information, connecting it to things that you already know are working, things that you've seen success with. That's going to help that client or that person that you're working with grow. Also, what challenges could you face? Again, if you're talking about implementing this with a single person, you're going to have to approach it a little bit differently than working on it in a small group. And thinking about the dynamics of that group. What challenges might you encounter? And if we can think about those in advance, it will definitely make it a little bit easier to implement this change if we've already kind of, again, thought about what could possibly come up to derail this strategy implementation. And then if you have any other thoughts about things that might need to be taken, I know I have some people that they deconstruct their books and they laminate page by page and then reconstruct them with like a 3-ring binder, simply because environmentally that's what they need to do to keep the books intact. If you have other thoughts like that, jot them down so that while you're in this moment, those bits of information will be helpful when you come to plan for this later on. Now, the second strategy, the RAAP strategy, builds on the RAW strategy. So you read and model, you have the pausing again, you ask a WH question and model, you have the pause again. If we still don't have any response, we answer that question with the model. And still, if we don't have anything, we're going to throw in our prompts. So ultimately, we want to be using the raw strategy, because the fewer prompts that we need to provide, the better. We want our clients to be participating in this strategy right away, as quickly as possible, but sometimes our clients are going to need that prompt. This is new. If they're a young child, if AAC is new to them, there's all kinds of reasons why we might need to include a prompt. Prompts are not bad. It doesn't mean anything negative, but it can be very helpful, and we do want to see these fade over the time that we have with our clients. We shouldn't get to the end of the school year and still be using the same prompt. Now, if you are working on expansions and extensions and growing our utterance length, that kind of thing, your prompt may still need to be there, but it might change. So for example, you're going from a 2-symbol message to a 4-symbol message. Your prompt might be then, show me 4 buttons. Use 4 buttons for your answer. Something like that that is very specific and precise, so that the instruction is clear. But it can also be something as generic as, it's your turn. Use your talker. Show me on your device.
We've lost you again, Melissa.
Okay, sorry, I got the note there that you lost it, but now it's reloaded again. I'm not sure why the audio cuts out. Okay, so what I was saying was, with the prompts, and thank you guys for popping in there and saying that, I appreciate it. With the prompts, you want to be fading those as you go. So check what you are able to do physically with a physical prompt, if hand over hand is allowed or not in your area. And again, just like with the RAAP strategy, anytime that your client responds, you respond to that communication. So what ends up happening as you start using the RAAP and the RAAP strategies, in the beginning, usually your clients are still pretty passive and they're needing that prompt. They're needing those asking and answering of questions. But as they start to learn, and in the research studies, it's done in literally a matter of like 2 or 3 sessions. They learn this so quickly. They will start to ask questions on their own before the adult communication partner has finished reading the text on that book, which is why it's so important to remember, if they start to initiate communication at any point, stop what you're doing and respond to them. That's what we want, okay? So it's not a matter of you have to finish the book page. It's a matter of, that's awesome, they initiated communication. Let's have that. Let's have that conversation. So I'm going to show you the RAAP strategy with the prompts in here. Again, another video so that you can see it in action.
So the second strategy that we call RAAP, is basically the same thing with an addition of prompt on the end. Now, I mentioned in the last demo with RAAP that if at any time we need to do or provide a verbal and or physical prompt, we can do that. However, this is a little different because it saves that prompt for the very end. When we are providing therapy services or trying to teach individuals how to become that more active initiating communicator, we want to fade out our prompts in a systematic way so that it's not an all or nothing type of situation. And so in the beginning, they may need these prompts a little bit earlier in the sequence, or they may need more frequent prompts. But as they get the hang of this and they start to master not only use of the device, but communication and language skills, we can put in the prompt at the final portion of the strategy. So We have our same book here, A Day at the Beach, still glossed and adapted from Tar Heel Reader, and we will still use the base of the rah, rah, rah strategy, but we will add on a prompt. Again, pausing in between every step, and again, responding at any point if the client initiates communication, asks a question, makes a comment, whatever form that may be, at any step along the way. So if we were to read our book, and I'm going to skip down here, you can play in the sand with sand toys. I'm going to model with you, and then I might make a comment like, you went to the beach and it was a good day. I provide that expected delay. I'm going to ask a question. Are you going to go again soon? I'm going to wait. And if they don't answer, then I'm going to provide an answer for them. Yes, I think you are. I think you might go this weekend. And since the whole point of this strategy is to really get our client to be responsive and then possibly initiating as we move on, if they still don't respond, I'm going to give a prompt, a verbal or a physical prompt, and it might even say, show something like this, like, when are you going to go to the beach? Your turn. Show me to. Show me go. Point to go. Something like that. We're going to be from general all the way to very specific. So it could be something like, show me on your board, or tell me on your device, use your Nova chat, or it could be something very specific, like use to, show me to, or even something more precise, like tell me go, because you're going to go next weekend. So we go through this, and again, at any point when they respond, we go right back up to the top and we continue along, reading, asking, answering, and then prompting.
So hopefully that helps, again, you to see it in action. And let's do the same thing, make some quick notes for reflection, thinking about with prompts, what are some things that maybe have worked for you so far? What challenges might you face? And then any other thoughts, again, to try and help set up for success when you start to try this with your own clients. Now, I always like to kind of leave you thinking about what is going to happen next. We've got these strategies here. How can we then start taking the use of core vocabulary, addressing grammar needs, working with teaching other people these types of strategies, whether it's a classroom peer, a parent, another caregiver, a teacher, because we want to see this type of communication across environments with different conversational partners. So thinking about how can we incorporate these across different environments, and then also what kinds of challenges might we encounter in those environments, because speaking and having a conversation at home is much different than school, is much different than outside in the community. So having a chance to brainstorm all of that can be very helpful. And then thinking about implementation. What kinds of challenges might we encounter in the classroom versus the therapy room versus home versus the community? What type of communication environments and communication partners does our client have that we need to think about? How can we incorporate this strategy across those? And then again, what kind of goals are we going to be working towards, maybe short term, like this school year, and then long term in the next 5 to 10 years? As SLPs, we like to think long term, you know, our end goal. I always think, even for my little bitty clients that are youngins, I think back to, okay, I need to think about their ultimate goal, which is going to be secondary education and the workforce and things like that, which really is not anywhere near on the minds of the parents at that point. and their life. So we need to think about that, and how can we take this same structure and transfer it from reading to now just conversation. And that's really what you want to work towards. When your client has mastered and you feel like they've really gotten the hang of the RAAP and the RAAP, take it from reading and move it to conversation. Move it to classroom activities. Move it to expository text. Try those kinds of things so that they get this familiar framework with higher level contexts, if you will, because that's going to help them generalize. And again, take something that's familiar and that they've been successful with and push them just outside of that comfort zone, but they're still in that zone of proximal development. It's still going to be something they have to work for to develop and to be successful with. So I'm going to open it up to questions for the last couple of minutes here. And while I wait to see if we have any come in, I want to tell you some of the books that I find to be extremely well-versed for this type of a strategy. So some of the features that I look for in these storybooks are stories that have a series of books in them. And the reason that this can be very helpful is for programming. If you have a series that have the same kinds of characters and the same kinds of locations, then you're only programming those characters and locations, etc., once. And it turns into very much like a core board for that particular series of books. I already mentioned that Little Critter was one of my favorites. I love that. There's so much to talk about in those story series. There's a lot happening in the illustrations. Little Critter is always getting into some kind of mischief, and the clients of all ages really enjoy that. There's always the little spider that goes hidden, and so you can, turn into a different activity, some like a treasure hunt looking for the spider on every single page. I like storybooks that also have what we call a double page spread, meaning that it opens up and there's 2 pages and there's text and pictures on both sides, so that it's not a single-sided, where some storybooks they've got, only one side that has text or pictures and the other side is pretty blank. That is kind of boring. So I like the double page spread. The other thing is that it's entertaining and engaging. So there might be something that you really like, but maybe it's not entertaining or engaging to your client. So you might have to go and look at other series and see what's going to get their attention. So some other series that are really great, there's a lot of oldies but goodies in this, but the Berenstain Bears are good. Dora and Diego are great. Sesame Street with Elmo, all of those are wonderful. Pete the Cat is a more modern one. He's got a good series in there. And then if you're working with older kids, like I said, having some type of magazine, whether it's a nature magazine or a sports magazine, a lot of those you can use the same types of concepts. You may not have people per se, but you may have animals, or you may have the sports, or you may have certain locations that you've programmed, so that again you have a simple basic page that you have programmed that's going to fit multiple different books. And then if you're working with older kids that storybooks may not necessarily be their jam, then going and taking this book into something that has great mental imagery. So the Magic Tree House series is great. Harry Potter is great. Those kinds of things. Again, they don't have illustrations in their stories, but they're so well written. And again, they can be highly engaging for our kids that are a little bit older, in the later high school or college ages. So hopefully that helps. I actually did not see any questions come in. So I'm going to move on to the resources here. Make sure that you check our website, saltillo.com, because there's so many different resources that are available to you on here. We link our webinars. As I already told you, this one is recorded. You'll be able to access it later. We also have low-tech implementation materials on our YouTube channel and on our website. We have video tutorials that you can use as a resource, not only for yourself, but to pass on to families. Things like, how do I edit a button? How do I back up a vocabulary file? Things like that. And we do have different groups on social media. One of our more popular one is our Nova Chat group on Facebook. And here is some contact information if you need it. Again, please feel free to email me if you have any questions. There's also our technical support and our funding website, aacfunding.com, for anything PRC Saltillo, anything that you're submitting a device for. So thank you very much for your time. We are at the top of the hour. I appreciate you bearing with us on the audio difficulties. I'm not sure why that happened, but I'm glad it wasn't any worse. And I really enjoyed this, and I hope that you benefited from it and that your clients benefit from it as well. Have a great day.